What's up, MetaNerdz? This breakdown will have us looking under the Durasteel armor to see how this ship works, learn its history and its ties to shipwright royalty, and how the V-wing left its mark on the galaxy, pulling from all these resources, and closing with some behind-the-scenes facts. The Alpha-3 Nimbus-class V-wing starfighter was personally designed by Wallace Blissix, the man that gave us the Gladiator and Victory-class Star Destroyers, and who trained his daughter Lyra to help him model things out. He would become one of the early founders of the Alliance to restore the Republic, while his daughter would continue working for Kuat Drive Yards, and go on to design the Imperial class. It was Blissix's genius that went into the Alpha-3, manufactured by the Starfighter subsidiary Kuat Systems Engineering, which would also produce the Delta 7, Eta 2, and later A-Wing, with the V-wing going into production later in the Clone Wars. But due to a more streamlined mass production technique that was perfected by the stresses of the overwhelming swarms of CIS fighters, this battle-hardened Kuat was able to pump out V-wings at such a rate that within a few months, the V-19 Torrent would be all but completely replaced as Clone Wars pilots preferred this more compact fighter. Each would cost about $15,000 less than the V-19, at $120K, and had a much smaller profile at 7.9 meters long and 3.8 meters wide. While even with the wings extended, it was just 5.84 meters tall. The pilot didn't have to worry about these giant wings of the Torrent. If you look at the cubic space the V-19 occupies, 1,404 cubic meters, the V-wing is only about 12% of that, at 175 cubic meters. If you wanted an Eta 2 with a shield, it would set you back nearly 3 times the credits. While there was a version of that with concussion missiles, that was a really rare modification, and there was a mod that packed a single concussion missile into the nose of the V-wing, and the extremely rare flak gun and proton bomb variants. When you throw in that the Eta was built with Jedi powers in mind, getting away with not having to put a ton of features in there since the pilot could just use the Force. That's why the standard Eta has no shield, but the V-wing does have shielding, equal firepower, and was only 50 km per hour slower, at 1,450 km per hour. But it has the same acceleration at 5,200 G, and a 75 megalight rating, a stat used for how fast it goes in the vacuum of space. Both of these craft would require the use of the Sillier 45 hyperdrive module, which itself was rated at a Class 1. And while their laser cannons are the same strength, the Alpha-3 had a much faster rate of fire, being a pair of dual rapid-fire laser cannons. There is an astromech located right behind the cockpit, which instead of an R-series was actually a Q7 series astromech. It had a pretty standard 10-jump memory, but was unique in that this dome is mirrored on the bottom, having no legs or treads. It just hovered around via repulsor tech, making it easier to navigate on any terrain, especially getting up and into the fighter. But it also broke down at an annoying rate, proving why the R-series design has remained the same for thousands of years. Keep your fancy floating droids for the tech shows. But since the wings folded down to act as their own landing gear, this meant they didn't need any infrastructure at all. Nothing to grab the ship or to drop in the astromech. Which is just one of the reasons why there were so many factions later on in its history that wanted to get their hands on this ship. It may not look like it, but in a way this is an early TIE fighter. It has 2 ion engines, or a twin ion engine system, with vertical wings that act as heat radiator panels. We even get a glimpse at this mesh pattern that would become iconic to the TIE. While there are also these large deflector shield heat sinks, which are required for powering a shield on such a small craft, while the actual power lines to these shields and the projectors themselves were packed into the nose. Fuel tanks lined each side of the body, and the laser cannons swivel on these wing hubs to give about a 90-degree firing arc. The ship lacks any life support systems, so the pilots had flight suits and helmets that were actually fully sealed. And not just in case of emergency like we see with the ARC-170 pilots, but covering the face like a full helmet. Though we do see this picked up by ARC pilots as well towards the end of the war. There was a very limited run on a sub-model called the Alpha-3B, or Besh, for the letter B in Arabesh, and there aren't much stats on this, but it is one of those variants that packed a projectile launcher. Being incredibly agile, the V-wing was the first main clone-piloted ship that was able to outmaneuver the droid Tri-Fighter, and learning from their enemy, the Republic started releasing these in swarms. Not using a hyperdrive ring for each ship, but packing a ton of them into a Venator, and releasing these Nimbus clouds with such speed that the unshielded Separatist starfighters were easily blown apart. The rapid-fire cannon, small profile, and speed were a great counter to the Vultures, Hyenas, and Tri-Fighters. But for larger targets, they would have to act as escorts for the ARC-170s and Y-wings. During the Battle of Coruscant, some of them did make it all the way to the Invisible Hand, but they also suffered their highest percentage of casualties during this final battle of the war. They were also the preferred escort fighter for VIPs, all the way up to the new Emperor himself, ensuring Palpatine and Vader's safe travel from Mustafar to the Sith medical station on Coruscant. Same goes for valuable cargo and top secret locations. being the bane of Bad Batch as V-wings were guarding the mysterious Imperial base on Daro, where they were able to damage and even take down the Marauders' powerful shielding, only for the auxiliary power of Gonki plugging in to save the day. And later they were used as the main security detail at Castle Sereno, as the Emperor was ordering the ransacking of Count Dooku's old treasure haul. These Imperial variants have the drab gray coloring. They lose the astromech, which means that they had no plans on sending these through hyperspace. And now the pilots are wearing a TK Stormtrooper version of the clone pilot helmet, still in that full face covering style, which is true for all the Imperial TIE Fighter line as well, since these all lacked the life support systems that were more common in the Republic era. And in this time of transition to the TIE LN, these later iterations of the V-wing use TIE Fighter engines, with a simple change that allows it to fit into this frame. The latest we see them in legal use is circa 14 BBY, under the command of Wilf Tarkin during the Birch Teller campaign, fighting against this early rebel faction, which was using salvaged and repurposed CIS droid fighters. So 5 years after the Battle of Coruscant, these battles would have looked a lot like something out of the Clone Wars. And while officially sent to the scrapyards in the years after this, many of them fell into the hands of private security forces and cartels. From the Hutts to the Zan Consortium, Mandalorian factions, and even outliving the Empire itself to be used by various remnant forces, now fighting against the New Republic. And the latest known use is around 30 years after the Battle of Endor, being used by Janata Security, who scooped up tons of the greatest ships from the past, modifying everything from the Nebulon B to ARC-170s and N-1 starfighters. So that's it for its breakdown, and as for behind the scenes facts, originally the end scene of Imperialized Venators was to have TIE fighters screeching by, but Lucas said that the Empire would have 19 years to build them, they didn't have to show this change immediately on screen, and it was fine to just have this transition with Republic craft, but just painted gray to show this turn to Empire. To keep the reference to TIE fighters, they do have a similar sound. And that's where you get the lore expanding on this with the detail that the TIE engine could be placed in a V-wing. In the original Battlefront series, there's a version that acted like a heavy bomber, but this is really just for game mechanics and doesn't make much sense lore-wise. While in the MMO Star Wars Galaxies, the ship became a status symbol, as you could only get it through a loot card in the Squadrons over Corellia trading card pack, and their extensive use by pirates is seen in the Empire at War series. While the LEGO version of this ship has a Q7 astromech, but it goes against the unique lore of this droid and has it looking like another R series. And thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video. The easiest way to stop a bad habit is to switch to a positive one, and Fume is designed perfectly to do just that. It's Fume's goal to make switching easy and enjoyable. They have thousands of 5-star reviews from people who've successfully switched when other solutions just didn't work. It's not electronic, there's no batteries. Fume is not a vape. It's all really simple and straightforward. You insert these cores that are flavored by plants, and you simply breathe through the tube. The Fume itself has a great weight, it feels really well made, and I was surprised at how tactile and almost like a fidget device, as I found myself playing with the clicks of the airflow dial and the magnetic end cap that snaps into place. The flavors are incredible. You get to take these cool minty breaths, or switch it up to the maple pepper or white cranberry. So far my favorite is the mint. Head to tryfume.com/MetaNerdz and use code MetaNerdz to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors, and the new version 2 Fume to help kickstart your positive habits. That's tryfum.com, and use code MetaNerdz to save an additional 10% off on your order today. So that's it for the Alpha-3 Nimbus-class V-wing starfighter. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and share the video. Those are all the best ways to help me out. Subscribe if you want to see more, and check out the membership. But most important of all, remember, great ship design is a highly heritable trait, and the Force will be with you, always.